Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining me. So today I'm really excited because I'm going to be chatting to the gorgeous Mark Hill, who we all know through our the Antique Roadshow and the Antiques Road Trip, and he's one of the experts regularly featured on there, and he really is an interesting guy with a really colourful career and extremely knowledgeable about antiques. He's written 12 books. Hello, Charlotte. It's a really good friend of mine, Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, I'm so excited to talk to him. I've got lots of questions to ask him. And, you know, it's funny, you see these people that pop up, these experts on TV, and you know, often you just see them talking about people bringing in pieces and them talking about the pieces at the time, but we don't really know anything about their background. And Mark, as I say, he's written 12 books, and he was part of the Eye Collector, which was the original basically gateway into antiques being online, so that you could bid online in antiques auctions for and so he basically was part of that. He was the CEO of it. So anyway, we're going to talk to him about that. So I'm going to invite him on. Let me see if he's joined yet. Okay, guys, let's see. Okay. Mark. Hopefully he has received the invite and it all goes smoothly. Thank you everyone who's joining. Hopefully Mark will be on any minute and we can... Oh, hello Mark!
Hello. Let me just find my specs.
Oh.
There we go. Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm really well, Mark, and I'm so happy to have you as my guest. I'm so grateful for you coming on. I feel really honoured that you've come on and joined to chat to us today.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's always lovely to have a chat with you, so it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, and I mean, we all know you from the friendly face on TV on the Antiques Roadshow and the Antiques Road Trip, but there's so much more to you. You know, that's big in itself, but there's so much more. I mean, your career, Mark, it's like, where do we start? Literally.
Well, you know what it's like in this day and age, a day of one job for one lifetime. It's all gone. You've got to have what they call a portfolio career, Victoria.
Yes.
That's what it's all about these days.
And well, if that's definitely what you've got, Mark, a portfolio career, because you've just, I mean, I'm reading about you, and I know, just to tell the followers that we've been, you know, having a little chat about what we were going to talk about, and I'm very mindful that we've got like half an hour, and how can we fit it all in, but I'm just going to let you do the talking, because I mean that's what you're so good at. But Mark, where did it all start? Did you go to uni? What was your background?
Well, I've always loved a good story. I mean, I don't know who doesn't. You know, we're humans. We're constantly curious about the stories behind things. So I did go to university. You know, I studied history of art and architecture there, which was kind of helpful.
Yeah.
But it was always the sort of things that humans come across, the things that we have, we may inherit, or we see in junk shops or antique shops or auctions all over the place. And I think the real moment, that real thing for me that really kicked it off, was when I think it was 15 or 16. I bought a pocket watch by a company called LeCoultre, who are very well known as being Jaeger LeCoultre. And I bought it in a junk shop and it cost me like £20, which, you know, I saved my paper round money, Victoria, to save up and buy it. And I bought it and then I put it into an auction and I was terrified. You know, my mum and dad had to sign all the papers for me. And it sold for £80. And I thought, wow, because not only did I make a profit, But I learned something in doing it, and I understood quality and started to really see why this was, what it was worth.
Yeah.
But I made a load of money, and I
Yeah.
thought, God, this is fascinating. And literally from that moment on, I was hooked.
And that was like the sort of literally the spark that started your career. It's funny because I think we've all got like little pockets of memories of things that stick out in our mind, and the fact that you made that good profit, the 80 quid, sort of, you were like, well, I could do all right doing this, couldn't I?
Well, this is it. Suddenly it became more than just a passing hobby. And I thought, gosh, is this something I could do for a living? And it was really that. And I moved in to do history of art. And then literally before I'd even graduated, I started working at Bonhams, the auctioneers, hauling bits of furniture around with great care, of course, but really at the bottom. So I was then taken into a department, my favourite department, the one I wanted to be in, which was the collectors department. And there, it's very much like the miscellaneous tables on the Antiques Roadshow, or even the Pantiles Arcade in Tunbridge Wells, which is where I'm sitting. There's something for everybody, and there's just an incredible array of quality. And that means there's an incredible array of stories to be told and learned and understood.
Wow, Mark, because when you moved on from Bonhams and Sothebys, and I suppose that was a really good starting point, because people, I mean, over the years, I've bought lots from Bonhams and Sothebys, and I was always in the London auction houses. And now with my business, I'm sort of chained more here to the shop. Funnily enough, I'm not traveling around so much because of the online world. I'm more sort of static here. And but you must have had so many things. Is that sort of like how you began your knowledge, would you say?
Well, certainly. I mean, they don't really do apprenticeships anymore, but
No.
working with my boss, Alexander Crumewing, at the time, and then, of course, moving up into Sotheby's, where I saw similar but very much more expensive and valuable objects with even greater stories and detail and quality, you begin to pick things up. And I firmly believe that it's by handling objects as much as it is hitting the books and hitting the library that you really, really actually understand and learn. But you're so right to mention the online side of things. So, it's almost like, Daddy, what did you do in the dot-com boom? And I ended up being invited by a company called iCollector to join them, to bring some expertise with some other people from Sotheby's. And by hook or by crook, as it went on over the couple of years I worked there, I ended up running a deal with a company you might have heard of called eBay. And they wanted to launch something called live bidding. And all the auctioneers were like, oh, this will never work. It'll never happen. And what is it now? 60, 70% of items, as you say, we're tied to our offices and homes and shops and stuff bidding online. So we launched live bidding with eBay Live Auctions and iCollector. And, well, look at it now.
Mark, that is an astounding part of your career. I mean, to have been part of that, and I can remember because I've been in antiques a long time before we went online, and I can remember at the very start of that, really feeling like there was a shift happening. And also, I don't know about you, but I sort of thought in the early days, I don't see how antiques fits with that, but boy, wasn't I, it has fitted, hasn't it?
It's fitted and it's thrived. And the good thing is that we can buy things from all over the world that we may not have known about. I remember packing envelopes with catalogues and sticking address labels on the front. Not only did it cost a fortune, it was sort of not really taking things to its maximum. So now we can bid from our armchairs or office chairs, wherever it is, even on our telephones, direct into sales rooms across the world. And so it's really revolutionized. And of course, there are other players there as well, saleroom.com, one of my favorites. Now we have Easy Live, of course, as well.
Yeah.
And it's just revolutionized the entire market and the entire way we buy and sell antiques.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it, that you just can think that anybody can bid in an auction house. The auctioneer is sitting there with his gavel, and he could be taking a bid from Hong Kong, he could be taking a bid from Hastings, he could be taking a bid from Berlin, anywhere. And I must admit, Mark, as for me, because I buy a lot in auction and know most of the auction houses all over the country,
I'm sure.
and I think, oh no, that's it, it's all over, I'm never going to be able to buy, because I feel like you're cutting out almost the middleman. But actually it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't.
No, It doesn't, and we can all still buy because we've all got a different eye and we're looking for different things. So you know, it does work. But tell me, Mark, are you technical then? Because you said you were part, you know, set up. Have you got? Because that's. I just wanted to ask you about that.
Well, you'll be completely aware of this, Victoria. When you do what we do, you basically are a one-man band
Yeah.
for everything. So you can't afford to pay somebody to design marketing. You always, you know, so you have to. You have to understand how to build a website, how to maintain it.
Yeah.
So WordPress, Shopify, all of these things have popped up to make it much easier. You might learn InDesign or Photoshop. Photography, a picture speaks 1,000 words. If you look at some of the photographs we have on Scottish Antiques, in fact, all of the photographs we have on Scottish Antiques and Mark Hill Auctions, which we'll talk about shortly,
Yeah, we're going to talk about
photography is it. It's all in the picture.
It
Can show so much. And people like us who get used to the business and build up an eye, you really build up an eye to how to read a photograph and understand something. So I'm not technical at all, but I've had to be just because of, you know, this is what we do and we've got to make the best of what we do.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, I've got my photographer. I've got two photographers.
Oh, lucky you.
Now she's listening. And I mean, really, you know, they are a crucial part of our business, and without them, I mean, I can take a photo on my phone and everything, Mark, but you know, we rely on their expertise.
We do.
To show, and especially with jewellery, because as you know, that's my speciality, is showing the fine detail. And both my photographers were not knowledgeable about jewellery at all, but they've really learned so much, because when you're looking with a camera at that fine eye, you see all the detail, and they often spot things and tell me, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't see that, you know. So yeah, that's a big part and parcel of the business. But tell us, Mark, about everybody will want to know about, you know, your TV when you've been featured on the BBC Antiques Roadshow. How did that come about?
Well, that came about, you know, often in our business, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And one of my friends, when I was working at iCollector, was a lady called Judith Miller, who is very sadly no longer with us. And she and I were working on a project for the website at the time. Yeah. And she said, hey, do you fancy working together? You know, I've got this new project coming up. And I was like, yeah, I could do with a change. This sounds good. Why not? And the dot-com boom was beginning the bubble was bursting. Let's put it that way. And I think we all remember those times. Yeah. So I joined with Judith and co-authored the Miller's Collectibles Price Guide, which was published internationally with her since 2003 to 2017. So really for quite a while.
That is it. That's incredible. I mean, everybody, even a lot of my American friends, you know, everybody, I mean, that was like a Christmas tree, you know, a Christmas tree. Oh, yeah. Would have been the Miller's Guide. I mean, it was like the antiques Bible, really, if you wanted to go and get an idea of what a value was. And it featured everything in there, didn't it, Mark?
Every year, every guide was different. Yeah. And yes, there might be different editions within a given year, but at the same time, every single new year was an entirely new range. It was 4,000, I think, in collectibles, and then 7,000 in antiques. It was the Bible of the antiques trade, and it built up into a library that really was completely without parallel. There were no other price guides that were fully illustrated that did what they did. And for most of us, we grew up. And Judith, I'm lucky to say, was one of my dearest friends, and I miss her terribly. She was just the most wonderful, inspirational, knowledgeable lady I met. She was wonderful.
Yeah, whenever I saw her on the TV, and she seemed, to me, I could imagine, and obviously you told me you were personal friends with her, I could imagine she was very much like what she was like on TV. Is that true?
Completely true. Absolutely. She was generous, and that's the answer to your question. So we were out at dinner one evening, and she said, oh, they've asked me to do the Antiques Roadshow again, but I think I might be able to squeeze it in. Do you fancy it? They've just started this new thing called 20th Century Roadshow. So I did one season of 20th Century Roadshow because that was all that was commissioned. Yes. And the producers, for some reason, liked me and said, well, why don't you try and, you know, join us for Antiques Roadshow? Lucky me. I mean, I constantly consider myself incredibly lucky to be able to do this stuff. So I did one roadshow. They seemed to like me. And since 2007, I'm lucky enough to still be there.
You really are. I mean, and you show it, because, I mean, I've just randomly approached you and you've been, I know, as I just said earlier, I was really appreciative that you've made the time to come and talk to me.
My pleasure.
And you are a genuine, really lovely guy. The fact that you've shared your valuable time and come on here.
Thank you.
But when you're on the TV, and I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, Michelle Rowan, and she's an antique jewellery historian. We were chatting this morning. I said, Mark's coming on. And she said, oh, Victoria, he is so knowledgeable. And Mark, I have to say, I'm so happy they have you, because I think sometimes, and I don't think the Antiques Roadshow is like this, but some of them, they have people on, and I don't necessarily think they make good TV, but they may not have the expanse of knowledge. And boy, have you got the expanse of knowledge.
Well, we're so lucky. No one person can know everything about everything that man has made since the dawn of time. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But because on the roadshow there are so many of us, maybe 27, 29, 30 on any given roadshow, we've got literally over a century's worth of knowledge there. All these people coming together. So what you don't see often on the show is us zipping from table to table to ask, Eric, I've seen this before. Who's the designer for that again? People will come over. So we are one big family, and we share a lot of that knowledge between each other.
I tell you who I'd love to get on here is Ronnie, my friend Ronnie. You know Ronnie.
He's amazing. A fount of knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, he is incredible. I always see him at Kempton, so I'm going to commandeer him and say, come on and do my live, because he's just, you guys, you just, like I say, you're an encyclopedia in your head of all the knowledge that you've gained over the years. So your main interest and passion, Mark, is decorative arts and Czechoslovakian glass. Is that
right?
Yeah,
I'm a typical Aquarian, I suppose you could say. So I'm a huge fan of anything that is the underdog. Yeah. And for me, glass is just as beautiful and more beautiful in different ways than ceramics. Sorry, ceramics people and pottery people out there, but that's what I believe. So it was all, you can buy a great piece of ceramic by a really good maker, and it will cost often many times more than the equivalent in glass. So glass has always, for me, been the underdog. So within that, I was buying what I could afford. And, in this business, we don't earn £20 million a year or something. We do it for love as much as anything. That's why I do it anyway. And I was buying these great bits of quality glass, and they were saying Murano. And you look in every Murano book, and they weren't there. So if they're not there in their brilliant quality and really great design, where are they? Where were they made? And a good colleague of mine, Dr. Graham Cooley, who I've collaborated with on exhibitions and books in the past, and I were actually in the British Library. We discovered a resource called the Czech Glass Review. Yeah. And we got told off, Victoria, for literally dancing and whooping in the aisles of the reading room, because we suddenly found this rich seam of all these designs, and they all turned out to be Czech. So I wrote a book, Graham put an exhibition on, and together we researched it. And it just stuck with me. It's an area I have a great fondness for. There's brilliant stories behind it, the designers, the designs, the political situation, the cultural and economic situation is fascinating. And you know what? The stuff is brilliant to look at too. So it's not like you're sort of, hair shirting, which is really good stuff. So yeah, it's my big passion. It's an area we're really only on the tip of the iceberg discovering. So it's exciting too.
Wow, I mean so do you get lots of that brought to the Antiques Roadshow? Do you have a really long queue?
We always have long queues on the Antiques Roadshow, without a doubt. I mean, that's what part of the roadshow sort of legend involves. But I've got a shop full of post-war Czech glass down here at the Pantiles Arcade in Tunbridge Wells, and people will bring things in sometimes, and we'll explain. Of course, Mark Hill Auctions as well, also in the Pantiles Arcade in Tunbridge Wells. We have people coming in, and when you get known, as you well know, Victoria, from jewellery and your activities, people recognise you for a certain area. So I get a lot brought in here for that.
Wow. Well, I think to come in and show them to you, they must feel, that they're getting, somebody with a expansive knowledge, and that's going to be really honest with them about, what their piece is valued at.
I'm lucky to see them. I'm lucky they bring them in. Yeah. It's like Christmas every morning.
So have you got any pieces that you can show us and tell us about at the moment that you can show?
Let me find something. I haven't. I've got something around the corner. It's not Czech though, but it is really amazing.
Yeah, we'd love you to tell us about something, and then we can talk about your auction.
Surprise question. So I just booked this into our November Eclectica auction. Let me take the receipt out of it. So I'm also a big fan of Medina glass. So that
Wow.
was designed by Michael Harris on the island of Malta. And this piece I've only seen ever in a line
Yeah.
drawing. I've never actually seen one in the flesh. So
Wow.
this is made using a technique called gathering on the post, which is why you've got this sort of slightly interesting rim. So
Yeah.
what they do is they take the amethyst glass, they blow it slightly, and then they use it to scoop up
Oh,
this colourless glass here, and then that's blown into a bark mould.
yeah.
But I've never seen this shape. It's only, as I say, in a line drawing. So when I saw this at a client's house, it was like, oh my gosh, it's one of those. Look at that. And that's coming up in our November Eclectica sale at Mark Hill Auctions. And that will have an estimate of £500 to £700 on it. But I sort of want it for myself.
Oh, do you know, Mark, it's funny it's got that bark design because they use that in jewellery, you know, in the modernist jewellery, like
Yes.
1960s, 1970s. Is that the age of that, or is that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you get crossovers, you
Yes.
get people thinking the same things at the same time. I mean, if you look at silver, you've got Stuart Devlin, Christopher Lawrence, people like that who are very well known for that, and indeed in jewellery too. I mean, if you look at, is it Andrew Greamer or Grimer? He had that very heavy textured rock sort of, and you could say perhaps it was connected to man landing on the moon and rock like that. But in glass, you think of Whitefriars, and Geoffrey Baxter, who designed a lot of those textured ranges, actually studied with and later on, after his graduation, still connected with Michael Harris, who was designer and maker of that piece. Who was it? Who sang "There Was Something in the Air That Night"? I kind of always get the feeling it's like that. There's just a zeitgeist, a feel. And people react to it in different ways with different media.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. So that's coming up in your next auction. So, Mark, tell the followers. I want to share because I think it's fantastic that you're in Tunbridge Wells, and people can bring things. And so, when is your next auction? And is it full? Can people still put things in? Tell us.
So my first auction, our inaugural auction, is a collection of paintings by an Iraqi modern artist. She really introduced modern art and modern art movements into Iraq and was a big pioneer in the Middle East for that. And her name is Nadra Azuz. She's sadly no longer with us, but her son has consigned the entire estate of her studio. So we've got her studio ranging from things produced in the 1950s right up to near when she died in sort of 2014, 2016. And for an 80-something-year-old woman, the vibrancy, the life, the vigor, the energy in these paintings is just absolutely remarkable. I mean, I've got one there. And then there's a couple more up here. But you think these were painted by somebody in their 70s and 80s. And they're really quite remarkably vivacious, full of energy and skill.
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, if you said, guess the age of the artist,
right?
I would never say a 70 or 80-year-old. I mean, she was very ahead of her time. What a character. Did you ever meet her?
Sadly, I didn't. No, I mean, she sounds like a real character. There's a lot online about her. So that will be our first auction. We're also selling the contents of a private museum. And our first general auction, which I'm calling Eclectica, will be in November. And we've got that fabulous bottle that we've already seen and a plethora of fabulous items coming up. A wonderful Georgian dressing box with silver gilt in the most immaculate condition. Loads of beautiful objects. It's sort of again, it's a little bit like Christmas, except this is Santa's workshop. I can go in the back room where we store everything carefully, and it's just full of treasures. I'm very lucky.
Oh, Mark. Well, I can, and also you are so infused. I love people that are enthusiastic about this business, and there's no doubt that you are. And I think your auction house is going to take off so well. And I must come down and meet you in person.
Please do come down. But the other side of it is that we're much less expensive than most other auction houses. So when, I bought things from many auction houses like you. I'm an inveterate buyer at auction.
Yes.
And sometimes you're paying 35% buyer's premium. And I'm not knocking my colleagues.
No.
20% vendor's commission or seller's commission. But we are 15 sliding down to 10% on both sides.
That's a jolly good deal for people, isn't it?
But what it means, Victoria, is that we're giving more of the value of the item back to its owner, back to the consigner, because we're taking less.
That's very fair, because I do think sometimes in auction, you know, I mean, I have to take that into account, and you
Big
know,
time.
obviously I value what I'm going to go to, and I have to take off that in my head. So obviously if I didn't have that, I'd be giving more, but that's just what we have to sort of take into account. But that's very decent of you, Mark, because I think that as a private person, they've always got to remember, you know, actually, hopefully auction houses will always be honest about that, about how much they're going to take out of it. So,
Oh yes.
you know,
But our aim
I,
is to effectively mean that the money that you're deducting that would go to the premium goes back to the
yeah,
seller. So
yeah,
bidders will bid more because
yeah,
they're paying the auction house, they're paying us less. So
yeah,
we can tailor our business to work. So I'm working from this fabulous room in the Pantiles
yeah,
Arcade, and it's a wonderful space. You can browse outside. There are pieces to buy, scottishantiques.com to buy online. But it means that we don't have to worry about the enormous space to handle great big bits of furniture, which is not what we're really going to do. I mean, of course, if you came to me with a wonderful Carlton House desk or a fabulous, you know, I don't think I'd turn that
a piece.
away. But we've built our business
Of
around being affordable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah. You can never say never, Mark, because you
No.
never know. Because I've even been guilty of that. I say to people, oh, you know, someone says I've got some jewelry and it's quite late, and I think, no, it's not me. And then when I look, you know, it could be. So I've, you know, like I quite like some of the 1970s jewelry designers, and in fact, I think I'm shifting to sort of. I mean, the ring I've got on now, which is, this is quite late, 1970s, just cultured pearl, but it's like a bomb style
I
ring.
know that looks lovely.
But I wouldn't have worn something like that, Mark, 20 years ago. It's far too over the top. But I think you change in your, you know, in your tastes as you grow older. You just look for a different look.
But
But
also tastes change. I mean, a dealer years and years ago in the 90s said to me that we are ultimately connected to the fashion business because it's whatever's in fashion is what people are going to want.
yeah,
And as dealers and auctioneers and people working in this business, we have to adapt to that change
yeah,
because we do or we die. And
yeah,
it's really as simple as that.
yeah. I think we do. But don't you think also, Mark, everything comes back round
Oh,
in full
yes.
circle, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. And believe me, all this fabulous furniture that my auction house is an auction room and office is actually full of mahogany furniture because not only is it affordable and fantastic quality, but you know, it will come back
Yeah,
round eventually. But I'd much rather buy an antique desk for 50 quid from the Georgian period, like I did, and have that in my office. It's green, it's upcycled, it's recycled. It's the best thing to do. And it just looks damn good as well.
and
Way
also,
better than an IKEA desk, which would cost me more money.
but you know it's going to last. It's always good, fairly good quality, isn't it? You know, like if I was just saying to a guy, just put a shelf up this morning in my shop, and I said, you know, like IKEA is good for some things, don't get me wrong, but some things,
Yeah.
you know, you buy it and as soon as you buy it, you've got to throw it away, Mark, haven't you?
Well, this is that I'm sitting next to a Georgian lowboy from the 1770s, 1780s, and it cost me 53 quid at auction. It's lasted since then. And you know what? It'll outlast three of
Yeah,
me. Solid oak, a beautiful colour, and that's the way to go. And I think you're right. Things will come back round. And when we
yeah,
realise we've got enough stuff in the world, I think recycling and reusing will become much, much
yeah,
more widely accepted.
yeah. Well, that's why I think our business is really taking a lift off. I mean, my business, jewelry, anything, antiques. It's people are actually learning to appreciate what's been made before, and I've seen a real shift in interest. I think really through Instagram and things like that in the last 10 years, and it's been great. I think for the antiques business generally, where people
Yes.
really are realizing they need to go up and look in their loft because they might find, you know, a Picasso or something.
But it's also not just things like furniture or great art or discovering that bargain. It's also the experience. And we've got a great selection of glass here, Georgian drinking glasses, Victorian drinking glasses. And you can spend as little as 5, 10, 15 pounds. You can spend 5, 10, 15,000 pounds if that's what you want to do. But I tell you what, drinking wine out of a
Yeah,
glass like that or pouring it out of a decanter, it's not just going to taste better. It makes you feel good. And don't we all want to feel good?
yeah, yeah. No, do you know, you're so right about that with glass, because I've got a client that I've seen over the years. She's actually in her 80s, and she loves antique glass, but she deals in like a lot of African jewelry, and she does like cut steel. and jet and amber, very organic jewelry. And when I've gone to see her, her shop's in Milan, and it's a beautiful shop. And she will serve me even just a glass of water, and it will always be in a Georgian cut glass, in, you know, like a wine glass from the Georgian period. And I look at it and think, I don't think I'd go anywhere and have that. But and she's the same with if I have a cup of tea with porcelain, she's got all antique tea sets, you know. And
That's not antique, it's Portmeirion from the 70s. But then I've also got this here as well. And we use these around the office. So this is a little teacup and saucer. What have we got on the bottom? This is Spode. And isn't that just stunning? Look at the quality of that. The hand painting on there and the gilding. You couldn't buy that today. Isn't that just the most gorgeous thing? These things should be used. They enrich our lives, not just our bank accounts.
No, I completely agree. Do you know, Mark, we just chatted about fashion. Well, that is one thing that I love about you that really stands out to me.
Bless you.
Is you are a dedicated follower of fashion, and I adore.
Look at that.
Well, I wasn't trying to show my boobs, but no.
But I don't think this is the right platform for that. Just saying.
But yeah, you obviously love. I mean, look, what have you got on now? You look like you've got a nice shirt on. Show us.
Oh, it's just a shirt today. It's quite warm today. It's that, as my mother would have said, it's a bit close today.
Yeah, I agree.
But I normally wear a waistcoat and a pin, but I've got my pin on my jacket today because boys can wear brooches, and I never leave the house without a brooch or a pin.
I love that about you. I love that about you. You know, when you wear a brooch or a pin, because that's one thing that's sort of dying. I think guys aren't wearing jewelry enough, and I think when you have a little tweed jacket with a little brooch, it just is. Yeah, it just says something to me. I just love anyone who just makes a little bit of effort in their dress. Do you like tweed?
I do like tweed, but I actually buy most of my clothes from vintage shops and charity shops. I mean, I'm a massive recycler and reuser of things. And you can get a brilliant quality tweed jacket, whatever it might be, or coat, in a charity shop or in vintage stores. And you're not going to get that quality for the price, I'm afraid, on most of today's high street. Yeah, you can go out and have things made, and I've had the odd suit made. I'm very lucky. I've known some very good tailors who've done me a deal. But primarily, most of the things I wear are from TK Maxx, or else they're from vintage shops, because, you know, I love a bargain. It's what we do, right, Victoria?
Yeah. No, I think there's nothing. I mean, for me, I love to go around a car boot sale. I love to go to a second-hand shop. And when I say I love hunting around antique shops, but you know, Mark, when you even, you know, the charity shops, oh my goodness, you can sniff out a bargain. And I do feel like once you've been in this business, and all the dealers that I know within the trade in different niches, it's just, you know, like you were saying about with your Jaeger LeCoultre watch, it's that thing, isn't it? Of finding that bargain. And I'm sounding like David Dickinson now, but no, but when you found something and you know it's good, you can't.
Well, it's like buying, you walk around a charity shop and you find a Dax, if anybody remembers Dax. Great brand in its time. It's now used to be in the Waterstone, which is now the Waterstones building in Piccadilly. You know, 15, 20 quid for a Dax tweed jacket, which was probably the equivalent of 300, 350 pounds. Now you're talking. That's a bargain.
Yeah, I remember that. So are you a hoarder of clothes, and are you? I can imagine you're immaculate, aren't you?
I prefer the word collector or curator. The H word is banned in our house. And I'm very lucky that my partner and I travel quite a lot, and he often travels to Germany, so I'm able to bring things in when he's not there. And I know he's in a meeting at the moment, so he's not watching this, so you know he's not going to hear it. But it means, oh, what, that old thing? I've had that for ages, be it a new vase or a new wine glass, or you know, whatever it may be, or a new piece of clothing. Whatever it is can come back in. So no, the H word I never liked, but curator or collector, that's how I see myself.
Oh, well, I mean, we love seeing you on TV. Now, a little birdie told me you're coming up on Sunday. Is that right?
I am indeed, yes. So it's the new series of the Antiques Roadshow. So for anyone who hasn't seen it so far, I think 2 or 3 episodes can be seen on BBC iPlayer. And yes, I'm up on Sunday with a really fascinating typewriter. And as a tease, probably the campest thing I have ever seen on the
Oh my
Antiques
God,
Roadshow.
I'm intrigued. I've got to watch it, Mark.
Believe me, you'll never guess it. You simply will never guess it. So I'm not even going to ask you to guess. It is bonkers. And when I saw it, it was just like, oh my heavens above, we've got to film this. And thankfully the producers agreed. It's bonkers, bonkers.
Oh well, guys. So, and when is it like 8 o'clock
It
Sunday night, Mark?
is indeed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I tell you what, it's like a national institution. The Antiques Roadshow, isn't it? The Sunday evening, 8 o'clock. In my family, we always have our roast dinner in the evening, so we'll like watch the roast dinner and then sit down and watch that, and the music and the whole thing. I mean, it's my favourite antique roadshow. I just, the TV show, because I just think the whole setting, and Fiona Bruce is brilliant on it, isn't she?
She's amazing, and she's fabulous all over. I mean, she is exactly as she comes over on screen: warm, friendly, lovely. And I'm so lucky to be able to do it. But they're still bringing audiences in of 5, 6, 7, 8 million every week. So you're amongst friends when you're sitting down watching the roadshow.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible to be part of that. But my God, I mean, you've just, I know we're going to round it up in a minute, but I must mention, because you've written 12 books, haven't you?
Yes. Some of them were reprints, but again, it's connected to, my desire to learn and then also to share that information. I mean, one of the things I learned when I started at Bonhams and Sothebys was that, you give what you get. So basically you're being given all this information. And as soon as I was in a position to be able to give information back, that's what I wanted to do. And yes, you can publish things on the internet and deal with it that way. But publishing books is a real labour of love. But there's something so nice about holding a book in your hands. And I think it does something for the market too. So I've done one on West German pottery, which lots of people now call fat lava, which was the title of the book. A couple on Czech glass, and then Caithness glass, Dartington glass, again, another one on Czech glass by Skrdlovice, all sorts of different things. And I'm just very lucky to have been able to publish them and deal with them. Hard work, but worth it when you see it at the end and you think, wow, I made that.
Oh, Mark, I mean, it's such an incredible achievement. And I can imagine, you just said hard work. It's funny enough, James Braxton has just been in to see me, and he's just dropped off some of his books because I've sold quite a few for him, and he's like he's a personal friend of mine anyway. And I said, oh, Mark's coming on in a minute to chat, and he said hi, by the way.
Hi, James.
And but he I know from talking to him, and he's only written one book, and obviously it was a fictional book, whereas yours are related to learning about the. So, I mean, it must have been like doing your university, the thesaurus for your graduation sort of thing, wasn't it?
Well, it was kind of odd, because it's a strange thing to think that before the books that were published, and I worked with Graham Cooley on a lot of those with the exhibitions that he put on, there was no information out there beforehand. So although people might discuss stuff and there might be sporadic bits around the internet, lots of the information in the books was primary research. Wow. So I was going back to original catalogues. So when I wrote a book on Medina glass and Isle of Wight glass, there really was no other book. There were books that might have had small chapters on it, but in that instance, I went and spoke to the founder's widow and his family. We consulted their archives. I contributed towards a book on Sam Herman, which meant that I interviewed Sam. I spent many, many enjoyable days. And Sam is incredibly important to 20th century decorative arts and studio glass. And learning about his experiences from the horse's mouth was just absolutely invaluable. So there's a lot of primary research. You're not just cribbing it from other books because they didn't exist.
Yeah, or literally looking up on Wikipedia, or looking. Yeah.
The stuff wasn't there. You had to speak to the designers. And I think, on a sort of slightly more depressing note, we're going through a decade now where we're losing a lot of those designers. So Sam sadly died in the very early stages of COVID, not of COVID. He was in his 80s, for goodness sake. He'd had a very busy and very successful life. But we've got to record that information before the designers go And all of those little questions like, why is that so rare? Why is that shaped like that? You just lose the information. So I think anyone who writes a book on that, and there are many people who, like I, have written books on primary sources and had to go and do original research, I think it's really important because we have to record it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's just, I think everyone, like we have here, I've got sources on all sorts of jewellery subjects and other pieces of antiques, because I've just collected antique books over the years, you know, and some I've bought new from Amazon and some I've bought while I've been at antique fairs, and I thought, oh, you know, that's a rare book. I mean, I was just putting some books up this morning and I've got one on Berlin iron.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's Anne Clifford, which I got at Bermondsey, I think one Sunday morning. I saw it on a stall and thought, and I think it's like an original. I mean, they've all been re-released as things do now on Amazon, but I think that's another thing I'd say to people, anyone wanting to learn a specific subject. You know, I know we can't all sit down literally and read a book from front to cover. Very rarely does anyone have the time these days, but you can pick things out from books, can't you, Mark?
But then the most important thing is, once you've read about it, go out and handle it, touch it, pick it up, feel it, if necessary, smell it. You know, you can't fake the smell of a teddy bear, an antique teddy bear. It's the smell of, you know, vomit and baby milk and tears and happiness and dribble and being dragged around the floor. So sometimes, you know, it's not just your sort of eyes, what you see, it's seeing with your fingers, and sometimes understanding with other senses like smell as well, and how something sounds when you tap it. That's important. So it's a sensory thing.
That's probably quite prevalent with glass, isn't it? Do you do that test?
It can be, but also with ceramics too, because obviously if you're pinging a piece of ceramic, you're finding out whether there's a hairline crack in it or something like that. So that's very important. That's why I say it's a sensory thing. It's not just about sight, but handling is so important to learning.
That's really interesting. Mark, do you have any? I'm steering off because I'm going to wind us down, because I think we've been on nearly 40 minutes, but which is, I mean, I knew you're just such an incredible guest with so we could just talk all day long.
Oh,
easily. I've got time for that. But do you have any other hobbies or interests apart from, obviously, and this takes up all your time with your, you know, passion of antiques?
So I grow bonsai trees. I quite enjoy gardening. I spent years when I was at university and school spending weekends earning a bit of extra money in a garden centre. So horticulture is a big thing for me. And obviously, although it's not necessarily related, or it is a bit related to antiques, I guess, but brooches are an interesting thing for me, wearing, collecting, buying, looking at different sizes. But to be honest, I'm so lucky to be able to do what I do. It is my lifeblood.
Yeah.
Who was it, Buddha or someone like that, who said, if you find a thing you enjoy, you'll never do a day's work in your life. And I think that's true. It's all encompassing, and I don't hate that.
Yeah, no, and that comes across. And I sort of, before I asked that question, I thought, well, I can see you're so driven and, you know, passionate and articulate about everything you've talked about, Mark. I mean, you really are a great guest. I feel like, how the hell would you fit anything else into your life, you know?
Well, even on holiday, we've just come back from 2 weeks traveling around Central Europe, and I'm very lucky with my partner. He lets me go into antique shops while he doodles off or gets a coffee or what have you. And I came back with a bootload of stuff because it happens, right? You know?
Yeah, but that's one thing that we can take what we do on holiday with us, can't we? I've found the odd bargain, you know, in shops when I've been on holiday, and I thought, and it's almost like that thing was waiting for me to find it. It's really quite.
They're always waiting, and you've got to get out there and find them. Answer the call.
Yeah, I completely agree, Mark. Do you have any pets?
We actually have a rescue cat, and I say rescue cat, we didn't get her from a home, but she'd been abandoned when we moved into our house 13 years ago, poor love, by some people who lived a street up. And of course she saw us and we fed her, and she suddenly was on the bed, and that was it. She'd moved in. But we love her dearly.
What colour is she?
She's black and white.
Oh,
So she sort of leaves white hair everywhere, and we live with a lot of mahogany. Although I'm a 20th century boy, our house is full of antique furniture from the Georgian Victorian periods. So white hair, just oh
oh,
my goodness gracious!
sorry about
I'm
that.
forever wandering around with a vax, Victoria.
Oh, well, I love, I mean, I've got a husky and we've got 4
Oh, you
cats, but
know then.
I love to have animals, and I just think my home wouldn't be the same without them. You know, I think they sort of just bring you down to earth a bit, and they love you unconditionally, don't they? So, you know,
We're very fond of her. I mean, she's an old lady now, but
oh,
she can still get, the odd mouse. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, this is terrible. But that's what cats do.
they do. You never stop that. It's just
No.
well, they're presents for you, Mark.
We've had that stage as well. They've been in the bed, they've been under the bed, and she knows when I'm going away, if I'm
Oh,
going off to film or
you
something
know,
like that. And I get gifts because obviously they think we're going hunting,
yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
So I get a gift before I go, as if to sort of say, no, you don't need to go out hunting. You can
Oh,
eat
I found
this.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that funny? And do you have any words of wisdom or like mantra that you that you might sort of something you would always say to yourself?
I think it's you don't just look at something, see it, really understand it.
Yeah,
And always buy quality. I mean,
that's
quality always
really good
wins
advice.
all the time.
Yeah,
And it's better to have one good quality thing in great condition than 10
I
average or poor quality stuff
agree.
or damaged things. But it's really to handle. I mean, I've mentioned it a couple of
Yeah,
times, but it is honestly the best way of learning. Don't trust everything you read on the internet. Go to books which are by and large edited. So that means they've been through a process, whereas anybody can just put anything they want on the internet and away it goes. Buy from trusted sources. Go and talk to people. It's a personal and, as I said before, sensory experience. A lot of
yeah,
people think it's about wearing a bow tie and a tweed jacket and standing in a nice Georgian building. But it is, but it's also about going out and handling
yeah,
it and looking, feeling, and learning and building a passion and connection with the object.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think I'm it's almost for me, and I guess this is the same for you because I've chatted to other people that that are dealers and experts. Is it becomes an emotion
Yeah,
that you a connection. Do you find that?
completely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's not just about something that you have to buy because you have
yeah,
this compulsion to buy it. It's not that at all. I mean, a lot of the things I use at home and hold very dearly are not at all valuable or expensive, but they're wonderful quality things.
yeah,
And as you say, there is this emotional connection to it. And I'm sorry, but you do not get that from something bought from, Habitat or
yeah.
IKEA or something like that. It just doesn't work.
No,
But
the
with these beautiful objects that history has left us behind, that time created this entire aura around them. And I think it's that we're picking
yeah.
up on.
Yeah, it's not the mass produced that just a machine is just turning out thousands of them. It's the fine tuning that someone sat and actually meticulously made this and put their heart and soul into it. So I think that really sums up what I think is antiques for all of us, really, isn't it? That's sort of that's the harmony, that the same thing that we're all sort of about. But
Absolutely.
Mark, I'm going to let you go now, but honestly, thank you so much for your time today. And I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I hope everybody's learned something about you. I mean, I have. I didn't know any of those things, and I feel like I've got to know you a bit better. And when I see you, I want to give you a hug.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely have a hug. If he's the
Yeah,
sensory thing again, you've got to have a hug.
yeah.
No, thank you so much for inviting me on, Victoria. It's been lovely chatting with you as
And,
well. And have a fantastic weekend
and
and
I
happy
want
hunting,
to wish
wherever it is.
the best of luck with the auction. I'm going to
Thank
come.
you.
When the viewing's on, I'm going to come down and see you. I'll email you and let you know when I'm going to
Let's
come.
do that.
But
Thanks so
well,
much, Victoria. Take care. Have a great weekend.
bye. I'm going to say
Bye.
bye to you
Bye.
now. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, guys, he was amazing. Thank you so much for everybody who joined us. I really felt like I got to know him a bit better than from what I've seen on the TV. you know, and I hope that I asked questions and you found him interesting. I'm so happy that he came on, and he's been so friendly, because as I say, it's taken me probably a good year to organize a day when we were both free and we could chat. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it over a cup of tea or your work break, or if you were just getting up in the morning. I've got another live in a couple of weeks' time with a guy called Andy Rowan, who is I'm trying to think of the name of his Instagram account. Can't remember it offhand, but I will tell you and warn you about it in a couple of weeks' time. Holland Park Antiques, I think he is. But anyway, we're going to chat to him in a couple of weeks, and I've got some other great guests coming up. But got to go now because we've got a customer about to come to the shop. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to record it if you've just jumped on now, and you'll be able to watch it from the start, so it will be saved on our grid. But I'm going to say goodbye now, everyone. See you. Bye.